Welcome to the Baltimore SharePoint Users Group June edition. I am your host, President of Baltimore SharePoint Users Group, Shadidi Laser, and we're going to go into the session for this evening. Uh, so I will share my screen and let's begin. Okay, so you're tuning in, and you may have heard of Baltimore SharePoint for the very first time. And so it's always important to deliver an overview. So since 2007, BSPUG or Baltimore SharePoint Users Group has existed to provide answers to commonly asked questions and provide a sense of community for Microsoft SharePoint professionals. At the time of the launch of the group, the Washington, D.C. metro area, which includes Maryland, which includes Virginia, was considered the number one market for Microsoft SharePoint in the world on planet Earth. So, and this is due to the amount of SharePoint installations in federal agencies or government agencies, universities, healthcare. And so that is where the demand came from. And so what Microsoft did, and this was a brilliant strategy, was that with the release of Windows Server, after Windows NT, and then we started to go into Windows Server, what they did was basically include WSS, which is Windows SharePoint Server, in as a free option for Windows Server. And I believe this started with Windows Server 2003. And so what this provided you was more or less a sandbox for you to play around with. And so what many organizations started to do was basically turn on their WSS instances. And so with SharePoint Portal Server having a server cost or a licensing cost, you have the option to turn on Windows SharePoint Server free of charge. And so this led to many organizations starting to get adopted or use SharePoint. And so with this, around 2006 became the release of Office SharePoint Server 2007. So Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007 kicked off with the acronym is MOS 2007. And this kicked off an explosion in deployments for SharePoint. To combine with this, the SharePoint influencers, let's say Joel Olson and a few others, Michael Gennady, and a few others, really helped with the explosion of SharePoint as a community tool, as well as helping demystify many of the challenges that were happening at this time due to the fact that Office SharePoint servers software licenses for let's say a mid-sized deployment, can scale up to $500,000. Many organizations were trying to find answers to questions that were not available. Let's say during that time, YouTube at that time was in its infancy, and many of the let's say TechNet and communities were not as more mature and robust as they are during this time. So the result of that were there were many organizations who had big time questions for big time investments, but did not have the resources to uh, have those. We, meaning the company that I was employed by in 2007, also had that challenge in that the company I was employed with elected to position themselves as the early adopter for companies who were looking to be on the cutting edge, or what they say is the bleeding edge of technology, and do, let's say, custom development on a very new product, which is Microsoft Office SharePoint Server. And so they wanted to spearhead the movement. And so the company, which will remain nameless, stepped to the forefront and delivered. So way back in it was the Tide Point complex at the time, but Under Armour since acquired it. Under Armour, the home branch was right the floor above this particular office. And so my coworker and I decided to start a user group. I, at the time, was the vice president of the uh, the SharePoint user group of Northern Virginia, also known as SUG DC. So what this meant was that I was based in Baltimore and I was working in DC at the time. I would get off work and drive to Dulles. Um, Try that during rush hour. Traffic is unbelievable. So after the meeting, I would drive from Dulles to Baltimore, and that, while I love what I was doing because I was filling a major void for a user group that needed that help. Obviously, if you can have the same resources that are closer, you're going to consider those. So we started Baltimore SharePoint Users Group, and since that time, we've accomplished some things. So since that time, we've gone on to, let's say, have over, first of all, longest running Microsoft SharePoint focused institution uh, in the land, in the state of Maryland. We've had over 1,500 members to achieve certification or training and resources, as well as uh, three practices who went on to become Microsoft partners. So that is a rich history. As you can see, some issues with the animation here, but we'll figure it out. And so, as I mentioned, three cheers for memory. So, I'd like to give a special thanks to Pro Object. They're based in good old Hanover, Maryland, and they have been our location sponsor uh, prior to COVID, and we thank them for their continued support. And so they typically have let's say, a list of jobs that are available. So please reach out to me if you're interested in, let's say, becoming a SharePoint engineer, or let's say IT specialist with a SharePoint / Microsoft 365 flavor in your day-to-day operation. Once again, ProObject, Hanover, Maryland, ranked as one of the top 100 companies to work in the state of Maryland. Now, in terms of community events, on the Microsoft 365 or SharePoint Saturday home front, the nearest event is Cabo San Lucas, 11 November 12th. And this is the SharePoint Saturday or SPS event site. And so I'm going to go back to the homepage here. What we're finding is that many of the events are playing a wait and see type of role, where the history of SPS event or SharePoint Saturday is what the SPS stands for, is typically in person. There have been events such as the Philadelphia event, Microsoft 365 Philly, which took place in April. Was typically in person, but they gave the effort of going virtual, and some events have done so successfully. But typically, there are multiple events that are kicking off every weekend. So many are taking a wait and see approach as the world gets comfortable with opening back up. So stay tuned to spsevents.org for new info on when events will be taking place. Now, there's still a lot of uncertainty. There's still businesses that have been decimated, have changed their way of working, shifting to virtual, have laid off employees, have cut contracts. There's a lot going on in the world, in our world. So the Bespoke golden rule is that you come from somewhere, meaning whether you are let's say working from home and come to our meetings, or let's say you are working in an office and come to our meetings. If you're unemployed and conducted a job search all day long and came to our meetings, we respect the fact that you're going above and beyond to learn about your career. And so, what we always look to do is make sure that our members stay gainfully employed. So, what does this mean? We have Baltimore SharePoint is a hub, and we have many uh, recruiters, staffing professionals, headhunters who are looking to find talent such as you because you attend our meetings. It saves them a lot of time prospecting and picking up and hanging up phones with strangers and cold calling if they're able to contact organizations such as ours and be able to pitch their opportunities directly to the leadership. So if you are struggling, if your contract is coming to an end, please send your resume to hello@mrshadi.com listed within the slide. Also, we are providing free resume and career review sessions through June 30th, 2021. That has been extended because uh, in January, we guesstimated that the world would be opening back up a little bit sooner. Obviously, that opportunity has a little bit more time that is needed. And so we've extended that to September. So, again, free resume, free career review session, and be happy to help you. So, send your resume to hello@mrshadid.com. Now, for those of you who are interested in taking your skills and starting your own consultancy or a freelance organization, then that's also an opportunity you can use, and that is through SCORE. And SCORE is the nation's largest network of certified business mentors. And so, what you gain access to is a um, free business mentors to help to grow your business. The website is greaterbaltimore.score.org. Moving on. In terms of news and announcements, we have a feature article, Team Beast Bug, um, featured on avpoint.com. So this is 3 must ask questions for effective document management. So if you have great news that's going on in your neck of the woods in your career, I would love to hear from it. Please email me directly so that we can celebrate you at our meetings. But this just recently came up, and you can go to bit.ly forward slash uh, 3 tips doc management. That is bit.ly forward slash 3 tips doc management. Moving along. Call for speakers. Baltimore SharePoint Users Group loves to feature the next best, brightest of speakers and experts, and to speak at our virtual and in-person events. So if that is you and you want to, let's say, test your knowledge by putting together a presentation, you learn the most by teaching. So it's an excellent opportunity. Then please um, contact me directly. Now, what you have to keep in mind is that here are the few types of presentations that we will consider. First is break fix, meaning this is what was not working within my work center, and this is what I did to fix it. Those don't have to be long presentations. Lesson learned, which means I performed troubleshooting on this, and this is what I got from it. And featured presentation, which is the 45 to 60-minute type. Now, shifting into the 1 tip. So, as I mentioned, there's different types of presentations, and I'm going to share one specific strategy with you, and that helps in my deployment. So, this typically takes place within the planning phase of the deployment. I'm going to share with you some practical tips. And so here we go. When you're going through the discussion or you receive an inquiry, it's always helpful to ask questions so that you don't waste time and duplicate effort. And so, what systems do you currently have in place is very important, because oftentimes, if you have, let's say, network file shares, if you have another, let's say, collaboration system that is, let's say, organization may be heavily using Google, for example, or they may have Microsoft Teams instance that they may not have considered. And so these are all questions that you want to ask, because that helps you to understand the history, the mistakes of a work center. Now, if you're getting the call to deliver an Office 365 solution, I would always ask why. What are the benefits that you feel you're going to gain from using this particular strategy? And if the decision maker, technical team can intelligently articulate the need, then there's a great use case for it. So, why Office 365? And finally, what is your 5-year plan? So, this goes into adoption. So, many team members, they may deploy SharePoint, but they don't think beyond how is the organization going to use it. And as a result, they waste hundreds of thousands of dollars in many cases in resources, in what you would say people hours, uh, and so in training costs, in redesign, redevelopment, redeploy. And so, what is your 5-year plan? What do you see the system doing? What do you see it replacing? What do you see it growing into? These are all great questions to ask your work centers. And so, in wrapping things up, make sure you use the one tip that I shared and ask those 3 questions in order to succeed. Call for Speakers is open for Baltimore SharePoint Users Group upcoming meetings. We will continue to meet virtually until the world opens up a bit, and then we will pursue our reopening strategy from there. On behalf of Baltimore SharePoint Users Group, I especially thank ProObject. I thank Black Professional Men for being a streaming partner. And thank you to all who have tuned into this broadcast. Enjoy your evening.